Welcome back, everyone. This is part 2 to the fencing series I'm doing. Now, this is budget fencing for cattle and horses here. I hope you got to catch my first video. It was budget fencing on goats. So what I'm going to be explaining to you today is options you got for cattle fencing and horse fencing. You can kind of use the same style fencing for both of those. At least in my opinion, you can. Other people may say different, but that's my opinion, and that's kind of how we do it. What we have here is a high tensile wire. Now I've got power on this wire. I'm not going to touch it. I hope you can see the wire there. Let's walk down here to a two-way post. Now we're down in the woods, so we got some little ribbons that's been tied on there. But this is high tensile wire, and what that means is this wire is a really strong wire, and it can be pulled extremely tight to keep your fence tight. However, we don't pull it extremely tight. We do pull it tight, but not extremely tight. So just like in my goat fence video, I'm just using one corner post right here. And it's a fairly big post. It's probably an 8-inch post. And it's 4 foot in the ground now. On this fencing here, with my goat fencing, it wasn't that much. But on this fencing where we do put pressure on it, we bury these things 4 foot. Well, I say it's 4 foot, and I'm guessing it's 4 foot. We put the auger on the tractor as deep as it will go, and then clean out the hole with post hole diggers. Clean it all out so that post will be in the ground as deep as it can be. Once this post gets put in the ground, then we'll tamp it back down around the base of the post, throw more dirt in, tamp it again, throw more dirt in, tamp it again. And like I said in the first video, I'll be showing what I use to tamp post with, and I'll be posting a link to the first video and to the third video up here in the top somewhere. Like I said, the third video is going to be on tools used to fence with, insulators, posts, just going over the basics of stuff. So anyways, this here is our horse pasture, and as you can see, I've just got 2 strands of wire. That's all that's on this post, on this pasture. I've got a T-post here. They're roughly about every 15 feet apart, maybe a little farther than that. And then when I come through here, I actually used my knee and my hip to place the insulators when I put this fence up. So that insulator is right below my knee. This insulator is right below my hip. Now I know that don't mean a whole lot to some of you because you don't know how tall I am, but I'm roughly 5'9", and I think that puts those wires about probably 14 inches off the ground, and then another 14 inches above that one. So what I'm getting at here with this style fencing is, you can get by with using these just one corner post. Now this fence has been here for a good 5 years. You can see this post has not moved. Down in there's no crack in the soil where this post is moved. And what you do with this high tensile wire is it's so strong you can't just bend it by hand or with pliers. You have to crimp it. Right there, I've got crimps. So you would use this style insulator here. The wire runs through that insulator, and then you pull your wire back around to join in with the wire, and you slide these little crimps on, and then you use a special plier to crimp those down, and I'll be showing you that in the third video. But both of these wires are hot. They both have power on them, and I hadn't had a problem at all with our horses. They stay in this fence. They've never attempted to get out. The only time they got out was when I left the gate open. and that's a different story. But you can see here, I've got the spring connectors on these. Now this high tensile wire does take so much pressure to get it straight. Just on the gate part, I use just some regular old steel wire. You know, it's not actually high tensile wire, but I just use it's just a regular old steel wire. I'm not even sure what gauge it was. It's actually some I had laying around. But you also have, let's see, we're not at a ratchet. We will go find a ratchet in this fence and I'll show you how you get this wire tight. Alright, so we're over here at a different corner post in the fence. And this is where we have one of the ratchet setups. Now you don't use the same ratchet for the whole fence unless, you know, you've got a small fence. Right here we've got roughly 5 acres fenced in. And this is the corner post that we're ratcheting from. Now if you can see, I've got a ratchet in that way on that wire and one going that way on that wire. The reason for that is I'm ratcheting off the same post because this post here is going to be one of the ones that has the most tension on it. So in other words, it's kind of counter pulling against each other. This one's pulling on it that way and this one's pulling on it that way. So it's not, the fence is almost holding the post, which, I mean, still, this post here is also 4 foot in the ground and it's tamped down, it's tight. So when you do this, they make a special tool that'll clamp, that goes down on the side and hooks on those little tits there, and it works just like a ratchet strap sort of, and you just ratchet that tight. Now I will, like I say, I don't crank down on it, because if you do crank down on it where you've only got one post, you will pull your post over. I don't want to do that, but this fence don't have to be that tight, because if you have a fence that tight and you have a tree fall on it, you're gonna pull your post over. And I've seen guys, you know, they make these springs that actually go in the wire, but once you pull your fence that tight, you've got those springs pulled tight as well, so they might as well not be there because they're already pulled to their maximum adjustment there. So anyways, I just keep it tight enough to where when you're looking down that line, it's a straight line down through there. And I'll come through maybe every 6 months to a year and just tighten this up, you know, maybe 1 or 2 clicks, just enough to kind of stretch out that wire again. It's not that much maintenance on it at all. I mean, you know, you're going to have to go around your fence occasionally just to get sticks off and trees off and check things out, make sure insulators are not broke. And so you just carry that tool with you and make sure to cut the power off, and you hit it 1 or 2 times on those ratchets. So the way this works is, once again, we've got this style insulator here and a wire, and we actually formed like a bracket to hold this ratchet. Now this wire right here, every bit of this does have power on it, and it's connected to the ratchet, and it goes through the ratchet to the wire. Then this is just a connector wire that we put in so the power will continue to flow from this side over to this side. Otherwise, this would break the power right here and you wouldn't have it on one side or the other. So pretty simple. You know, it does take some special tools to do this high tensile wire, but it looks nice. And for horses, I like keeping the high tensile wire because, I don't know, you don't really want that barbed wire around your horse. At least I don't anyways. I guess you could use barbed wire for horses, but I don't want to. Now this will also work for cows. This exact fence would work for cows. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to put a couple of cows in here with my horses this upcoming year, but just to raise out, and it works fine. So just do a little comparison here. I took and had 1 roll, I think I used 1.5 rolls of high tensile wire on this fence, and that's with 2 strands of wire. Just for the wire alone, it's roughly about 99 bucks for a roll. I can't remember how many feet's in a roll, but I used 1.5 rolls on this fence. So I had to buy 2 rolls, so let's say $200 in wire. Then your post. Your post, if you can find somebody who has telephone poles for sale, keep an eye out on your local Craigslist ad. Telephone poles work great because they're big posts. You can cut them to the length you want. A normal telephone pole, you can get at least 2 or 3 posts out of. And I've done that for several, and it works great. And they last forever, really. But then for my line post, on woven wire, on a high tensile wire, I like to use T-post just because it's a little more force than using a regular like round post, which I'll show you here in just a minute. We're going to go down to one of our cow pastures, and I'm going to show you the fence setup we have down there. But where this high tensile wire has pressure on it, I do like to use T-post for my line post. They kind of help hold it up. But there's not much to it. You can get out. I fenced in this whole area here for less than like $500, and to fence in that much with woven wire, with the amount of wooden posts I'd have had to have for those corner braces, because not sure if you watched the first video or not, but just in case you didn't watch the first video, this corner post here would have had to have had another another post down here, and then a brace going across, which would have took another post, and then a bracing in the middle, and it would have had to been the same exact thing on this side of the post. Another post out here, another corner post. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 extra posts that I would have had to have done this corner, where I got by with one. And it's, once again, this has been here for a good 4, 5 years. That post is not leaning. That post is standing straight. That looks good. That fence up through there, I hope you can see it all. It's straight. It looks good. And there's probably 500 feet up the hill, and up in the very top corner I've got another wooden post just stuck in the ground, like I said, 4 foot deep and tamped around. And between here and there, there's only one wooden post. And the only reason I put that wooden post in, as you can see, I'm not sure you can tell from here, but there's a hump in the ground there, and the fence has to kind of go up at an angle and then back down. And I knew there was going to be a little more pressure on the wire right there, so I wanted to put a wooden post up. If that had been a flat ground, I could have got by with 100% T-post from this post to that post and been fine. And the more T-posts you can use, they're a whole lot cheaper than using wooden post. T-posts run you roughly $3, $4 a piece, $5 a piece. Those wooden posts, if you have to buy them, are going to at least be $8, $10, $14 a piece. So that adds up quick, real quick. And like I mentioned in the video before, the first video, that woven wire is like 330 feet in a roll, and a roll is at least going to be $150. And 330 feet is not going to go very far when you're fencing in several acres. So that adds up quick too. But we're going to take a trip down to the other cow pasture here, and we'll show you what we've got going on down there. It's barbed wire, but we'll show you that here in just a few minutes. The cow pasture. You see the cows out there. They're out there grazing and eating hay and whatnot, just being cows. But one thing I thought about on the way down here that I kind of wanted to mention, if you've got cows, you got to remember, cows got to be fed. All animals have got to be fed. And it don't matter what the weather is. If it's snowing, raining, pretty, sunny, doesn't matter. You got to feed your animals because they got to eat just like you got to eat. And in the wintertime, it can get muddy feeding animals. Now, all the ground down here is froze right now. But this road coming in here is terrible. It's one big mud hole. And, that's just part of life. Unless you can take and afford to gravel every road you've got on your farm. If that was the case, we've got about probably a 2-mile road here that'd have to be graveled on. And I don't know any farmer that can afford to gravel a 2-mile road. But anyways, back to the video here, what we're supposed to be talking about. This is extreme budget fencing at its best right here now. This fence has been here for probably 30 years at least. You can tell by this here wooden post, it's been here a while. And this thing has seen better days, but it's still holding up. Look at that, it's still sturdy. So what I want to show you here is we have these spring gates again, and down here nothing fancy is used. All it is these little glass nail-on insulators with copper wire twisted around them for the hook. It's not like what I showed you in the first video with the goat fence and what I used up at my house. But I'm not even sure those things were invented 30 years ago though, when this fence was built. But all this is 2 strands of barbed wire all the way out. And you can look, we have metal round posts all the way out through here. That's all that's holding this fence up. This fence is way less shorter than my horse fence up at the house is. It's about 6 inches above my knee. I can step over this fence, but it holds cows. The cows do not get out of this fence. You know, on occasion, if we have a cow that gets out, or a wild cow or something other, just, you know, we get rid of it. If we start having cows get out, we get rid of them, which we really don't. We really hardly ever have a problem with that. But what we've got here, this is a different style post you can use. They do make the little rebar posts that you can buy at your local farm store or Tractor Supply. But these posts here are actually 1/2 inch rod that are cut to length. You know, you buy a whole stick of 1/2 inch rod and cut it to your length you want your post to be, which these are probably about 3 foot, and then part of it's drove in the ground here. And these posts are nice when you've got a fence that, especially it's going to be running through the woods. Well, one thing, they're cheap. They're way cheaper than buying T-post, and these insulators that you use on them just screw on the back like that, just screws up and tightens, and you can slide it up and down your post, which brings me to my next point. When you've got a fence like this running through the woods and a tree falls on it, all it's going to do is push down that insulator on the wire, because this wire is not tight enough to break the wire or anything if a tree does fall on it. It's just tight enough, just like I said with my other fences before, it's just tight enough to look good. It's tight enough to not look, well, I'm not going to say this fence looks good, because this one could probably use some work, but like I said, it's been here for 30 years and it's still serving the purpose. I hope the wind's not messing us up there. It's starting to pick up a little bit, but this fence can be running through the woods. You go around your fence, you're toting a chainsaw, you see the tree on the fence, you cut the tree off the fence, pull the insulator right back up. Worst thing that I've ever had happen is it'll break the little tits off of this insulator here, and you have to replace the insulator, and that's nothing. If you'd have had a big $100 woven wire fence running through the middle of the woods, a tree fell on it, you've destroyed a lot, and you've got yourself at least a day's worth of work fixing that thing back. So keep that in mind. That's something to really think about there, because, you know, we're real people with real jobs, with real lives. We don't have time to fix fences. We just have time to make them. And once they're up, they need to work and they need to function. And so we're going around a fence, you know, you're thinking about it on a Saturday or Sunday morning, we're going around our fence. That's the last thing we want to be doing, because we've got so much other stuff to do, because during the week we're at work. So if we have a tree down on a fence, I mean, really, 5 minutes time, we can have that fence fixed. So it's not a big deal. If we'd have had a woven wire fence and a tree on it, like I said, you've got a good day's worth of work just fixing the fence up. But anyways, like I said, this is budget fencing at its best right here, because this is about as cheap a fence as you can get that will work to put cows in. And I think these posts here are roughly, I think they're about 15 feet apart or so too, maybe 10 foot. And they're just drove in the ground, simply drove in the ground with a hammer. And they work great. Now, I will say This fence here is about a mile off the road. We're a mile from any road in all directions right here. This is a pretty isolated farm we've got down here. So if this fence were up on the side of a major highway or at least a busy road, you might want to add another third strand of wire up to the top here, just to kind of secure that you're not going to have cows get out in the middle of the road. Because if you do have cows get out, you're responsible for them. If they make somebody wreck and tear their car up, or somebody gets hurt, there's some fine lines there, but it can be brought back on the farmer. So you have to make sure your cows stay up. But that's all in the cows too, you know. We have gentle cows. Our cows are gentle, and they're fat, they're happy, they're full, they like to, you know, they eat. We feed them well. They get sweet during the winter months, like it is right now. They get fed sweet feed at least 3 times a week, and they constantly have 2 rolls of hay in here for them to eat on. So you know, that's one key point to keeping a cow up is feed it. Because if a cow gets hungry, it's going to get out. I don't care what kind of fence you have, it's going to get out and it's going to find something to eat. I mean, you think about it. If you were penned up and you got hungry enough, you'd get out and find something to eat too. So make sure you keep your cows fed. That'll be one good way of keeping them in the fence. But I wanted to just bring you down here and show you this. This has worked for us for 30 years. Cows don't get out down here. We have neighbors who have a fence right over there on their farm, and their cows get in our fence all the time, but our cows don't get out. They stay here, which that fence actually looks worse than this fence. That's a different story. His fence is rough, but you know, that's just something to think about. You know, we don't have a fancy woven wire fence. We can't afford a fancy woven wire fence. There's no way in the world you could farm like we do. And again, once again, the wind is blowing down here. I hope it's not messing up my voice. But there's no way in the world you could afford those high dollar woven wire fences, especially for a guy to come and put it up for you and pay the guy. There's no way in the world to afford it. Not farming cows anyways. You have to have another income. You're not going to pay for a fence like that with cows unless you're running, unless you're running several hundred heads of cows, you know, and that's kind of like your full-time operation, then yeah, you probably can't afford to have a fence like that. You know, that's a good investment for a guy like that. But for us, we do this on the side. We're not in it to make a killing. We're in it to raise. I mean, we slaughter a cow once or twice a year for us to eat on, and the rest we just take to the market and sell the calves and everything, and kind of, you know, it's kind of a side income. But the profit margin there is so small. You know, you kind of reinvest what you make off your cows back into the land, taking care of the grass, and taking care of the cows. I mean, it's not free to feed them by no means. And we grind our own feed. We, up until a couple of years ago, we were raising the corn, we were grinding the corn, and then feeding it to our cows. But now we actually buy the corn from a local guy here who, it just got such a problem with us with deer. We decided to start buying our corn because we'd plant the corn crop and the deer would eat it up and we wouldn't get enough out of it to even bring back what we had in it. But I've done got off subject again. I'm sorry. So anyways, I just wanted to show you this type of fencing down here. You know, this works. It's cheap. Couple rolls of barbed wire and a couple of these metal rods and a few wooden posts. This wooden post here was actually 30 years ago, was cut off of a old circle sawmill we have, like one of the old antique style sawmills that runs with a power unit, and it's a big circle saw. That post was actually cut on that saw many years ago. So in reality, we don't have much money at all invested in this fence. But you know, for the person just starting out, if you wanted to rebuild a fence and build it just like this, you could go buy a couple wooden posts for your gate post, and then buy a couple wooden posts for your corner post, and the rest could just be, you can go to your local metal supply shop or something like that, and you can pick up sticks of 1/2-inch rod, and they'll probably even cut it for you to the length you want it cut. And these insulators can be picked up at any local farm and garden place, or your local tractor supply. Any place like that's going to have them. So you know, this is just a cheap way of getting by with having cows, and they will stay in this type of fence. So I'm going to kind of wrap this video up. I want to remind you to, if you hadn't seen the first video, check it out. Like I said, I'll have a link to it up here somewhere in the top or at the bottom. It'll be across here somewhere. And I'm also going to have the third part to this here series, which is going to be tools, insulators, types of wire, and just simple tricks to make your life easier when you're putting your fence up. So I'll also have a link to it. It'll be around here somewhere. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Pound that like button if you like what you see, and hit the subscribe button. And if you have any suggestions or any questions about what we've talked about, make sure you put it down in the comments. And we'll see you on the next video.